Welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Coles. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Children in Nature Network. We are excited to have you with us today for our webinar on nature play as an early childhood health equity strategy. We have two wonderful presenters from the National Wildlife Federation, both Jessica Yulee and Liz Houston. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are recording our session, and so we ask everyone to turn off your cameras and mute yourselves during the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat, so you can share your questions there, and then I will share them with our presenters. Natalie Deeb is running tech for us today. Thank you, Natalie. We are recording today's session, and I will share it tomorrow in an email. If you're uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then private message Natalie with your name for attendance. I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I am on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on Indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. You can learn more about land acknowledgements and how to find out where you are at a few links I'm about to put in the chat, and then also some links about those people that I've mentioned. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jessica and Liz. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Thanks, Jessie. Awesome. Well, it's great to join you all. Again, my name is Liz Houston, and I know that pronunciation is probably not something you're used to in Texas, but I'm told it's the original Scottish pronunciation, Houston. So I don't see the city changing the way they pronounce the city of Houston anytime soon, but I thought I would share that little bit of trivia. I'm joining you from Colorado. I am on the ancestral land of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, and it's great to have you all here today. Thank you for taking the time for our presentation, Nature Play, and Early Childhood Health Equity Strategy. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Jessie's forwarding the slides for me. Go ahead, Jessie. So as we get started, we're just going to do a little reflection, little interactive activity here. As spring is approaching, I hope it's more spring-like where you are, because it's snowing like crazy here in Colorado, but we're all looking forward to spring. Could you just share in the chat what outdoor activity or activities you're looking forward to experiencing with children this coming season? Just go ahead and put that in the chat and we'll read some of those answers out. Flying kites, that's a good one. Hiking, bike riding, exploring the creek, planting new plants, scavenger hunt. Oh, that's fun. Birding, love birding. Sensory garden, waking up. Geocaching. Oh, these are great answers. Herping. Is that I assume that has to do with herpetology. Might have to learn more about that. Making pressed flowers with my 7-year-old. Community gardens. Oh, this is making me want summer to be here. Big Bend camping. These are awesome answers. Very good. Thank you so much. Let's go to the next slide. So we get a lot of questions about why the National Wildlife Federation is working in these spaces with young children. We are one of the oldest and largest conservation organizations. We were founded in 1936. Some of you may have grown up with Ranger Rick. Some of you may use Ranger Rick in your teachings and your interactions with young children today, and that's us. The National Wildlife Federation believes that in order to save both wildlife and ourselves, we need to ensure that all people have access to clean water and air, safe communities, easy and equitable access to nature, and protection from the ravages of climate change. And one of our main priorities is connecting young children to nature. And this focus is especially important because we know that children who have outdoor nature experiences grow into adults who care about wildlife and our environment. And even more significantly, this work has to start with our youngest children. All the conservation work that we do will have even more impact when we engage with children early in life. Next slide, please. So we created ECHO. And go ahead and go to the next slide, Jesse. Our vision with early childhood health outdoors is really to ensure that young children experience nature daily for the health of our kids, communities, and planet. So in our case, this is not about an annual trip to the state park. It's really about having equitable access to nature in the spaces where young children spend time daily, so that our children, our communities, and our planet are healthier in the long run. So ECHO facilitates the creation of nature-based outdoor play settings and provides training, resources, and guidance for parents, caregivers, and educators to activate these settings. And we also advocate for state and federal policies, rules, and regulations to make high-quality outdoor play and learning more accessible to more children. So ECHO launched in Colorado in 2017 with a grant from the Colorado Health Foundation. And I always stress that, that it was the Colorado Health Foundation who launched this program because of the healthy benefits to young children. And now we have collaborative partners and/or projects in New Mexico, Michigan, Arizona, Oregon, Nebraska, Texas, of course, and South Carolina. So I'll talk a little bit more about how, where we work and how we work with the next slide. Again, our vision is to bring nature to the places where children spend time daily. So of course we work primarily in the licensed childcare setting, childcare centers and family childcare homes, but we also work in schools and community spaces. We really work anywhere where children are, including libraries, museums, parks, family resource centers, and also, of course, in children's homes. Next slide, please. So we work with these sites and their communities to design and activate outdoor spaces. Community engagement is threaded throughout this entire process. And we provide a lot of support for different types of programs and support systems, like early childhood coaches. We provide support and services either through grant-driven support, when that's available from our foundation supporters, or through a fee-based consultancy. But either way, we use a tailored, stakeholder-driven process, which is designed to complement local efforts. And it is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Every process, every project we work on is tailored to meet specific, to really ensure the vision of those stakeholders comes to life. Next slide, please. So breaking this down a little bit more, again, our design process is very comprehensive. It includes analyzing existing conditions of a site, working with the community at a workshop to design the site, producing a schematic plan, and developing a cost estimate and action plan to guide site changes over time. It is a very incremental and iterative process. And to complement that, we provide activation support, which includes training, resources, and/or professional development for teachers, staff members, environmental educators, and other early childhood specialists to help young children, to help engage young children outdoors and connect to nature. We also help engage families and volunteers to get involved with all aspects of the project, from design and decision-making to building and maintaining sites. And we are here to provide ongoing technical assistance and resources. We don't just cut the ribbon and walk away from these sites once they're off and running. So this shows you some of our current projects across the country. We have been working very intentionally with the city of Littleton here in Colorado thinking about all the places where young children and families spend time in a very robust community engagement project. We have been really thrilled to partner with Texas Tech to develop a series of 3D tours of some of our echo sites. We're really excited about that project. We have a very robust echo partner in Nebraska at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, who is really helping us think comprehensively and forward thinking progressively with our professional development. So you can see we work in a lot of different locations and a lot of different contexts across the country, and excited to answer any questions about these specifically toward the end of our presentation. Next slide, please. So, of course, understanding that you all are steeped deeply in this work, and you know this very well, but we all know and appreciate research has proven again and again that nature is good for young children, as well as their families, caregivers, teachers, and providers. We can provide a lot of resources and research briefs if anyone wants to dig in deeper into specifically how high quality outdoor learning environments support early childhood physical and mental health. We know that it supports their social, emotional development as well. And of course, as we've talked about, we know that it fosters a lifelong connection to nature. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to pause a minute and let you all read this slide. So we absolutely see this work as a health equity strategy. There are just too many families and communities who do not have easy access to healthy, dynamic outdoor spaces. Specifically, children of color and children living in families with low incomes are more likely to live in areas without quality parks and green space. The Center for American Progress calls this the nature gap. And across the US, 3/4 of census tracts with large numbers of children and families of color live in so-called nature-deprived places. And for children who lack access to the developmental benefits of nearby nature in their home environments due to systemic racism and its impact on the built environment, bringing nature into their daily lives is a way to offset this disparity. And so we are excited to share with you a few strategies and examples of how we do that. Next slide, please. So you may be aware that over the last 10, 15 years, a lot of time, attention, and resources have been dedicated to quality improvement in childcare facilities. And you can see an example of this here, right? Lots of different choices, lots of different colors, activities. This is an intentionally designed indoor space. And on the next slide, because we know of the myriad benefits of equitable daily access to outdoor quality, we are striving to ensure that there is the same attention to that quality paid to these outdoor spaces. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jessie, to take it from here.
All right, thanks, Liz. And Liz, can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for being here. Like Liz said, my name is Jessie and I am the ECHO Senior Outreach Coordinator. So we're really excited to be here today to talk a little bit about our work as a health equity strategy. So we've talked a little bit about what ECHO does. We know the importance of children having that daily time in quality natural spaces. So now what do those spaces actually look like? We are now just going to take a little bit of time to share some examples and photo examples of different types of spaces that we've worked with. And that includes public spaces like parks and libraries. It includes childcare programs, homes, and public spaces. So we're going to share some photo examples and tell a little bit of their stories of places that we've worked with, of what nature play looks like. So the first space that we want to look at is Anderson Park. Anderson Park is a public park just west of Denver, Colorado. And we began working with this park in 2018 to help them create a nature play area in the park. So they received some seed grant funding to get started with their outdoor improvements. And then they also received design support from the ECHO team to create and implement a plan for their space. So after engaging with their community and participating in design workshops, this is the site plan for their space for the nature play area. So I'll share some more photos in just a minute, but just a few things from their plan that I just want to pull out that they wanted to add based off of their design workshop. So they wanted to add a log balancing area, a dry stream bed, seating areas for adults and children, pollinator gardens, and a labyrinth. So there's more that they wanted to add as well, but those are just a few of the examples that you would be able to find here in this plan. So what was really special about Anderson Park's process is that they were able to connect with one of their nearby elementary schools to really engage the elementary school students in this process of designing the nature play area. So the school that they worked with was a project-based learning school. And this project really presented an opportunity for the students to engage in learning around something that would have a big impact on their direct community. So in these pictures, you can see that the students were able to come to the park and really think about the site analysis and beginning of the design process. So here they are taking measurements of the space. So they were really able to learn about, what does it look like to start doing site analysis and designing a space. It also had some unexpected opportunities for learning that weren't planned for. So for example, in these pictures, they're trying to take measurements of the space, but they realized that their tape measurers actually weren't long enough to get all of the measurements that they needed. So the students really had to problem solve to think about how could they still get the measurements using their tape measurers and their classmates as measuring points. So then a next part of the process for them is that they were able to research the different aspects of the design plan, like the labyrinth and the pollinator garden. And they then were able to present their research to their classmates, to city officials, and to school administration as well. So this really helped them learn about that research process and also public speaking. So this project also supported new areas of learning for the students as well. So in this picture on the left, the students were learning how to create a CAD drawing of the labyrinth for the outdoor space. And on the right, the students were learning how to create models of the different settings that they wanted to add to the design plan. So I just wanted to specifically share a little bit about this parks process with the elementary school students, because it really just created this shared ownership of this public space. So the children were able to actually co-create the space that they themselves would be using and that they would be playing in. So it was just a really special process. So this is a little bit of what the space looks like right now. So you can see that they added some balancing logs and stumps. They have a pathway that connects the space and all of the different settings. They have trees and plants and wildlife. And overall, it just feels very welcoming and open to children to explore and to play in. They also were able to create these really amazing garden areas. So they used pollinators and native plants. And you just picture young children, right, walking through this space, surrounded by the plants. They can touch the plants and smell them. They can see butterflies and other wildlife. It just creates this really amazing opportunity for them to engage with those natural aspects. And just some final photos of this Anderson Park space. So they added this dry riverbed to their space. And then here again on the right is this log and stump balancing area. And you can see the young child and their parent playing together in the space and engaging in that space. So this project, as with all of our projects, is a work in progress. They're constantly making changes and making progress, but they've made some really amazing progress, and they still are working with those elementary school students. So it's just a really great example of what a public space can look like when they really engage their community and the people who will be using the space. So the next space that I want to look at is also a public space. So this is HEALground at Meadows Park Community Center. This is a community center in Colorado Springs, and we started working with them in 2019. So this is their design plan that we helped them create. So again, I won't go through each aspect of this design plan, but just a few of the things that they wanted to add. They wanted to add earth play, a log balancing area. They wanted to have an art area, a play kitchen, a loose parts area, and a sensory wall. So again, there's more, but that's just a little bit, a few examples of what they wanted in their space. So for this specific project, we worked with the community center staff, but we also worked with city employees from the Parks and Rec Department. And then we also worked with a local nonprofit that supports their on-site food production. So we were able to really help this community center incorporate natural features into their design plan that had never been used before in Colorado Springs parks. So the city has really been using this specific community center as a case study for how they could maybe add some of those natural elements to their other city parks as well. So this is a quote from Brian Cates. He is their parks operation administrator, and he told us that this relatively small project stands a very good chance of establishing an exciting precedent that could manifest in scores of future projects, short and long term, neighborhood and larger community based, to adopt similar practices and improve the health and well-being of thousands of residents in the process. So it's really just goes to show that this site is really able to be a model for the rest of the city. This project was also initiated by the direct community center staff. So it was fully coming from the people who are using the space every day, and we were really able to incorporate all of their input and try to make a plan for a space that they would want to use each day with children. So the next public space that we wanted to share an example of is the Santa Fe Children's Museum in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So this museum wanted to renovate their adjacent outdoor space to better support young children experiencing nature daily. So we were invited to partner with them to help create this vision. We helped lead virtual design workshops as this was happening during the pandemic. And then we helped them create this master plan to help guide their process. So here is their plan. And again, I won't go through each individual part, but just a few of the things that they wanted to add. They wanted a game area. There's a multi-use lawn, a music area, sand area, fairy gardens, outdoor classroom, and then vegetated nooks throughout the space. So for this particular space, we really had to think about the activation of the space and who was going to be using the outdoor space. Because for this museum, they used this outdoor space for outdoor classes, for free play for children and families visiting the museum, and then they also used it for summer camps. So it was really important to think about all of those different user groups to create a space that works for all of those different purposes. So they are working on this space right now. We don't have pictures because they're in the process of making some of their initial changes. But what's really special about this space is that they were able to use this outdoor area during COVID, during the pandemic, to host COVID-safe camps for preschoolers. So it created this safe place for families to be able to bring their children to experience the outdoors, experience camp in a way that was safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. They also were able to share some of their produce from their gardens with the local homeless shelter, which they also plan to do moving forward. So again, just creating this community model of support centered around this access to outdoor play and learning. And then one more public space that we want to give an example of, and then we'll go into some other types of spaces that we've worked with. So this is Gunnison Public Library. And we began working with this library in 2020, and we've been working with them ever since. So they received some seed grant funding for their outdoor space improvements. They received design support from the ECHO team, and then we also supported them in some of their community engagement efforts around this project. So Gunnison Public Library really was able to create a robust community engagement process, and this was fully during the pandemic. So it did have that added challenge of, not being safe to be in person, and we had to adjust some of the community engagement aspects based on that. But they sent out surveys to Gunnison residents. And they asked them, with this adjacent space to the library, what do you want to see? What do you not want to see? And then how do you want the space to be used for programming and for free play around the library? We helped them host community meetings. We did this virtually using tools like Zoom to talk to community members about the project, give them some information, and then also allow an opportunity for residents to share their voices and opinions on, again, what they want to see in the space. Using all of those opinions and that input from the community and the design workshop, we helped them create this design plan. We don't have pictures because, again, they're in the very initial stages of making progress on their space, but I can walk you through a little bit of what they wanted in their plans based on what the community said. So they added pathways throughout their space just to connect the different settings and different aspects of the space. They wanted to have seating for a storytelling area. They have quiet reading nooks throughout the outdoor space for children to read by themselves outside or with their families. They wanted gardens and wildlife habitats. They wanted to add a story trail. And then there are also wild play zones for open exploration for the children. So what's really great about this plan is that Gunnison Public Library wanted to have specific areas for that outdoor programming. So for the storytelling, for the story trail, but they also wanted to have areas for open-ended play for children to explore and be able to be out in nature and create their own play and their own learning. So this is another really good example of a community space that's really accessible to the community of Gunnison. And we're really excited to see their vision come to life and see them make progress on this space. So I wanted to give one example of work that we've done in public school systems. So this is Meeker Preschool. And all of the different type of work that we do with different spaces is a different process. So working within a school district, that means that there are a lot of different people and departments that need to be brought in to the process of this new space. So what does nature play look like in a public school? So these are just two examples of what it can look like in a public school space. So here on the left, this is an outdoor classroom space. So this allows teachers to move curriculum and activities outdoors. They can do lessons outdoors, surrounded by nature. And this is just a really great way to connect that curriculum with outdoor learning. Here on the right, this is an example of their garden beds. So again, it just creates those natural elements for children to engage with, but they can also incorporate gardening into their curriculum and engage the children in that gardening process. So this is just one example of working with public schools, but with all of the partners that we work with, we're always trying to think about, how we can work with different types of partners. And in an example like a school district, how can our work with one school maybe support other schools in the district as well? So the next few examples that we want to share are examples of outdoor spaces from childcare centers. So this childcare center is Step by Step Child Development Center. It's a program just north of Denver, and we've partnered with them since 2017. So they were one of our first echo sites, and we've been able to work with them ever since. So they have a unique space for their outdoor space. Their play space was actually built on top of a parking lot in a strip mall. So it's just a very unique environment that you would not necessarily imagine being a great nature play area for children. So these are pictures of their infant space where the babies go to play. And this is the before picture on the left. So before they made changes, the infant space was just not very functional for teachers and for the babies. So you can see in this picture, there's just not many things for the babies to engage in. The teachers actually had to pass the babies down to get them into the space. There weren't places for the teachers to sit to play with the babies, and it was just not a very usable space for anyone involved.
Really? Ask your
So
friends.
here is the after picture after they began making changes to their space. So you can just tell right away that this space feels much more welcoming and engaging for both children and adults. So they added this pergola for shade and for comfort. They have these garden beds that you can see down here in the corner, and these double as gardens and as seating for adults and the babies. So the teachers can sit with the babies can be surrounded by the plants, they can reach out and touch them and feel them, and it creates that really great sensory experience as well. You can see that they added a new fence and some storage. They added just more areas for the children to play, like this sensory wall over here. And it's much easier for the teachers to access with the babies. So overall, they've just really made it into this really great space for babies to play outside with their teachers and have access to engage with that nature, because we know that it's important even for our youngest learners like our babies. So these pictures are from the same program, but this is their toddler space. So on the left, again, we have their before picture, before they made any changes. And you can just see that it feels a little disjointed. So they have the toys scattered throughout the space and the different sets of play equipment, but just not as many choices. And again, just that kind of disjointed feeling. Here in the after picture on the right, you can see that they've made so many changes. So they added the shaded deck. They added this pathway that connects all of the different areas of the space. They added this bridge here in the middle so that the toddlers can practice walking on different surfaces and have that new challenge once they've mastered walking on flat land. You can see that it just has more play areas. They've added vegetation for the toddlers to be able to engage with nature. And again, it's just a much more welcoming and engaging space for both the adults and the children. And then one last photo from this center. This is the same program, but it is their preschool space. So here in the before picture, you can see that they had some things for the children to do. They had this area for the children to bike. They had some storage in the back, but again, just doesn't feel very welcoming and doesn't feel like there's many options for the preschoolers to play with. Here on the right, it looks like a completely different space. They've made a lot of changes. They added a pathway again to improve that circulation throughout the space. They have these outdoor classroom spaces that they can use for group lessons. They can use for art and music. They've added stumps and electrical spools, which serve as child-sized tables. They've added these tire planters to add that vegetation and those little natural aspects. And again, there's just so many more options for the children to play with and engage with their teachers and their family members. So this program director, we've been working with them since 2017. And again, they've made so much progress, but it's always continuing. They're always continuing to make changes and that incremental change. But this director has told us that the changes that they've made have had such a dramatic improvement and impact on child behavior. So there's less arguing, the children are less bored, there's more for them to do, there's more things to challenge them as they grow and progress. There's places for them, you know, whether it's the preschoolers or the little babies, to reach out and touch plants and flowers. They can feel the wind blow. And all of that is happening in this space that was built on top of a parking lot. So it's just a really great example of no matter what your space is, you can make some really big improvements just by taking very small steps. And then we have one other center example of a childcare center. This is Rocky Mountain Children's Discovery Center, and we've been working with them since 2018. So in these pictures, in the before picture, this used to be their infant space, and it was just not a functional space for them. It was hard for them to get to, hard to use, and you can see that there's just not much for them to do to engage the children in. In the after picture, they actually turned this space into a field trip space, so a place where they can take the children to engage in a new area. And you can just see that it has so much more life in it. They added this pathway and all of these amazing plants so the children can engage with nature. They can walk through and see butterflies and insects. They can watch the plants change with the season. It just has become a functional space to take the children to really engage with nature. And this is the same program. So again, it's Rocky Mountain Children's Discovery Center, but this is their preschool space. So before, you can see that they had their play climber, they had some shade aspects, it feels somewhat like a typical traditional playground, but not as many options, not many things for the children to do. And in the after, you can see that they've kept some of the aspects that they had before, but they've just added so many more options and created this space that feels very engaging and like it has options for children. So you can see that they kept their play climber, they kept these shade aspects because they're great for keeping children and adults safe, but they added so much more. So they added this pathway, and the pathway really creates that spine for the outdoor space. So it's similar to how we see hallways in indoor spaces. It just increases circulation and it connects all of the different areas of the outdoor space. They added a mud kitchen and sand play. They added trees and planters throughout the space so that there are those little pockets of nature throughout. And this is just a really great example of using what you already have and just making improvements and adding little pockets of activity and places to activate so that children have choices and things to be challenged by. All right, and I'm going to wrap up the examples so we can get to our last section and have some time for questions. But the last few examples that we wanted to share are of one more type of space, and that's actually looking at nature play at home in people's backyards. So these are some examples of homes that we've worked with. So in these two pictures, these are raised garden beds in people's backyards. So again, they just add those natural elements. They give that sensory aspect for children. Children can be a part of the gardening process. It helps them learn about planting, and it's just that experience of them taking care of a seed, helping it grow, and watching something grow that they had a hand in taking care of. So this can be a really great, amazing experience for children that people can add to whatever their space is, whether that's a backyard or a balcony or a patio. Just a few more examples of gardening in backyards. So these are just children helping gardening in their homes. So I love that these show the wide range of age that children can help with gardening. So this little girl on the left, she has her little cup and she's there to water her pumpkins and take care of her pumpkin plants. And the children on the right are helping take care of their flowers in their flower beds as well. So again, it's just a really great way for children to learn about the natural world. And it can also help support healthy eating. If children are helping to grow vegetables and fruits, they're going to be much more likely to eat them and be willing to try new things if they had a hand in creating them and growing them and taking care of them. These are just two more photos from homes, from backyards. So these places both added mud kitchens to their backyards. So we love mud kitchens. We think they're a great way to play outside. They're great for messy play, great for dramatic play and pretend cooking. And these can be made DIY. Both of these examples were made by the people who live there and their community members. You just add pots and pans and it can be a really, really great setting for children outside. And then our last examples, these are examples of acoustic play in backyards. So again, these are really easy to do DIY. You just add pots and pans and anything that makes noise. The children can make music or they can just make noise, even if it's not music, and have those different sensory experiences outside. So we're really just trying to think about the variety of activities that you can provide for children outside in nature in whatever the space is. So I know that that was a lot of content and a lot of examples, but those were just some examples of nature play that we've seen in very different settings. So in public spaces, schools, centers, and homes. We've seen a lot of these programs and places make such amazing changes that have had such an impact on the children and the adults that use them. And we know that right now there's an increased attention in getting children outdoors, especially during the pandemic. We've seen a rise in outdoor preschools and similar spaces. So there really is just this moment happening right now where there is this increased attention to this type of work. But we also know that this movement needs advocacy and resources. So I'm going to hand it back to Liz, and she's going to talk a little bit about that right now.
Thanks, Jessie. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the big vision and our goals for systems change, because we know that we can only accomplish so much through programmatic work, right? This sort of site-by-site work. We also know that we need policy work to make changes across the landscape. We really feel that outdoor play and learning for young children is a movement. ECHO is we see it much more than a program. We see that it's a movement. We're so thrilled to have accomplished so much in Colorado. And now, as I mentioned earlier, we are enthusiastically partnering with local early childhood and children's health champions and environmental educators and public health folks and school districts, all of those folks that Jesse talked about. We're working with all of them to scale this work across the country. And so in order to do that, we really need to lay the groundwork for success, to till the soil, use some analogies here, make sure it's fertile, plant the seed. All big trees, like you saw in that last slide, start as little saplings, right? So we need to look at the systems and the infrastructures in place, and really think about how outdoor quality for young children fit into those systems, and how can we make outdoor play and learning more accessible to more children everywhere, every day. So moving on to the next slide, we partnered last year with an organization called New America. They are a national think tank, and we developed a series of policy recommendations to build outdoor learning opportunities that help young children thrive. And these recommendations are meant to help both state and federal leaders promote healthy child development, support the early childhood workforce, and enhance health equity in communities. Next slide, please. And in the state policy recommendations document, we pulled out some examples of policies and practices that have really created systemic change in states like North Carolina and Texas. And some of you may be aware of Texas's commitment to this work. You may know that the Texas Department of State Health Services brought together state and regional partners to create a statewide initiative to promote outdoor learning. It's called Ole Texas. I'm sure some of you are more than familiar. They use the following strategies, which I think are a model for other states to follow, to increase the number of early childhood programs with quality outdoor spaces. So they developed a network of trained landscape and design professionals to design, along with early childhood staff, outdoor spaces featuring best practices. They convene coalitions to identify local resources to assist early childhood educators to develop and construct these outdoor learning environments, creating resources for professionals from key disciplines. Again, emphasizing this is a cross-disciplinary effort, cross-domain, but bringing landscape architects together, early childhood staff, horticulturalists, licensing professionals, and nature play specialists to increase technical expertise in designing and implementing these outdoor environments. So a huge team effort across the state. And as you also may know, Texas revised the state's voluntary quality rating and improvement system guidelines to add an emphasis on outdoor learning. And those are linked to and reinforce classroom learning. So again, it's just a model for other states to follow, and it's really pretty unique to Texas and North Carolina. North Carolina, of course, has done a lot of work in this area as well. So we are really proud and pleased to feature both these case studies in these series of policy recommendations that we put together that are available on our website. I'm happy to share that link. Going on to the next slide. We always think that we absolutely feel that outdoor quality is within reach. Again, we've been talking big picture, sweeping changes, but we know that these improvements start small. They start on the ground with teachers and providers and caregivers and the children taking small steps to engage in nature-based experiences, like the one you see here. Next slide, please. We have a lot of resources on our website that are downloadable, like Nature Play at Home, various how-to guides. There's our website right there. We invite you to go on and explore all of these free resources. And on the next slide, we also have a variety of training opportunities where you can learn more about a variety of topics of nature-based play and learning, specifically for young children in our case. But we're always providing webinars pretty monthly that are free. We encourage you to go to this site that you see on the slide and explore those opportunities as well. Next slide, please. This is the site that is also in the picture behind me. This is the site that Jesse was talking about, the Rocky Mountain Children's Discovery Center. This is a still from that tool I was telling you about where we partner with Texas Tech to create a series of 3D videos of some of our programs across the state. So you can see, you can tour these sites like you would when you go on Zillow to look at houses. It's really a wonderful tool, and we're hoping to launch that later on this year. And so we, like I'm sure many of you, really feel that the time is to the time is now to get creative and be really innovative to expand this work and to support this national movement. A lot of folks across the country are doing the same thing. You may have seen this wonderful article recently published by the Children in Nature Network. If not, we can follow up with a link. There's some great photos here. So it's a movement, lots of momentum behind it. We're so grateful for your time and attention today. And on the last page, last slide, you can see our contact information. Oh, here's just one more slide. I love this slide. I'm going to be quiet and let you all read this one. We just think this is really inspirational. We know you all do this work every day. You're just as committed as we are. Now on the next slide is our contact information. And with that, we've got just a little over 10 minutes for questions. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Liz and Jessica, we've already got some coming into the chat. So our first one is this just for early childhood, or do you all work with elementary, middle, and high school age centers as well?
Jesse, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So much of our work so far has been focused on the early childhood age range. So most of it has been focused on
the black one's missing.
A lot of those photos that I shared were from early childhood, but we do work with elementary schools as well. And then a lot of our work with public spaces, we do design them to work for all age ranges. So we do have some experience planning outdoor spaces for birth through teenage years. I would say that the bulk of our work and our grant funded work has been focused on that early childhood centers and preschools. But I would say that the older age ranges are something that we have dabbled in as well. And we can work with anyone who's maybe interested in some of that work as well. Does that answer your question?
We have another one here from Marisa. She's asking, is the guidance for school and home planning free, or does it cost? Is the service available nationwide?
Sure, that's a great question. So we try and make ourselves available to answer questions, basic questions about what your vision might be for an outdoor space. You know, we have a team of landscape designers, and Jesse and myself, and an early childhood policy specialist. So we're not a huge team, but we are here as a resource as you're thinking about a vision for your space. And we can point you to a lot of examples, and we can point you to resources on our website, as well as organizations, institutions like the Natural Learning Initiative at North Carolina State University. We are able to provide those seed grants that Jesse referred to occasionally when we have foundation support, when we have grants that we can pass through to providers to help them launch the process. of renovating and improving their outdoor space. And through those seed grants, we can provide more robust landscape design assistance. We don't have any applications currently available, but that's how we launched in Colorado, was through this big grant from Colorado Health Foundation that we were able to pass through. Small, kickstarting grants. They certainly didn't cover all the costs involved in implementing these designs, but we really help when we have this process in place and can provide these grants. We help these programs with fundraising and community engagement and in-kind donations, and thinking about where they can get, donated plants, and where they can get volunteers and engage families to engage in the hands-on design build out, as well as perhaps raise grant money to hire contractors. So we're here to help provide, guidance and resources as much as possible. We do not have a comprehensive full service nationwide design assistance capacity right now. But we are more than happy to talk to you, Marisa, about your specific situation and where you are right now, and how we may be able to guide you so that you can make improvements to your outdoor space. So I hope that answers your question.
I'll also just add to that with our professional development, and I know Liz mentioned like our free monthly webinars and trainings that we provide. So where that might not necessarily, build you an action plan or a strategic plan for your space, that schematic design, we do have trainings that focus on the best practice indicators for outdoor spaces, talk through what it looks like to action plan and get that community support, like Liz said. So whereas you might not walk away with that, actual landscape professional design, those trainings and webinars, especially the design focused ones, really can help you figure out how to use your own knowledge and your own information about your own space to create your own plan and think about the things that you can add, whatever your budget is. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you, Jessie.
We probably have time for one or two more questions. If anyone has one they'd like to put in the chat. While folks are thinking, I will go ahead and put our evaluation for today in the chat. So if you all could just take a few moments to fill out our evaluation. It takes less than 5 minutes, I promise. So if you could fill that out, that really helps us as we are planning our webinars and moving forward. And then I also share the information with Jessica and Liz as well, because they helps them fine tune their presentation as well. In the meantime, I will also say that our next webinar next month will be on April 6th, and it is on Plants and Children Grow Healthy Together. So it is a great follow-up to today's webinar. So it's going to be with Melissa Felty from Texas Parks and Wildlife, and she's going to be talking about what are those great plants that you can be putting into these spaces as you are designing them that are great for little kids to be interacting with. I am not seeing any other questions come in, so just want to give Liz and Jessica, y'all a chance if you have anything you want to plug, to give any updates you would like to give.
I don't have any. Jessie, do you? We just really appreciate all these thoughtful questions and your time and attention today, and just thank you for doing the work that you do.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have any either, but please feel free to reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions or just anything you'd like to chat through. We would really love to be a resource to you in any way that we can.
Well, thank you so much. Y'all's presentation has been fantastic. Thank you everyone for coming today. We did record the session, so we will be working on putting that up on our YouTube channel, and I'll be sending out the link to everyone in a follow-up email. Liz and Jessica, is it okay if I put your slides on that email as well? Okay, great. I'll share the PowerPoint presentation as well. Please feel free to share this presentation with anyone that you work with who maybe wasn't able to make it today and you think would really benefit from watching. And other than that, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.